This is a short story that I titled Unbreakable Bond to showcase the deep bond between my family, especially my father and older sister. See these two? They're my late grandparents, Garway and Willow Sharp. The forces behind the bonds instilled within my family, and especially my father, this guy coming up in the white, William Sharp. He made sure to pass this on to his children. And as much as I would like to include every one of my siblings in this story, certain circumstances created a more solid relationship between my father, Susan, and myself than the rest of our clan. Susan and I are exactly 10 years apart, but have always been close. This relationship started in Liberia, where we are both originally from, and managed to remain just as strong all of these years later. I like to think it has something to do with our journey from our home to our states. We both left behind a home in our mothers. Speaking of which, this one is mine, Miss Louise Hayes. She bid me goodbye when I was just a little girl, and she would sacrifice 13 years without seeing me again. That is correct. From the age of 5 until I was 18 years old, my mother and I lived 3,000 miles apart. There was no physical contact, only digital between us. Same thing with Susan and her mom. And because my father was aware of the toll this would take on us, he pushed for us to be more unified. Because my father lived in America as well, I obviously saw him more often. Due to this, I became the ultimate daddy's girl. I took his advice on almost everything. He told me to read, so I read books. He told me to play sports, and so I did. He did tell me to stay away from boys, and I promised him that I would try my hardest. Or at least I told him I did, and I did try my hardest, as you can tell. But for all the progress the three of us have made, that bond was almost severed over the summer. See, my father is a diabetic. He travels back and forth between America and Liberia quite often. He went back to Liberia for 6 months, and during his 6-month stay there this year, he ended up cutting his leg on something sharp. This is never good for diabetics, as their wounds typically heal at a much slower rate. We did not realize how bad things had gotten until I received a call at work 2 weeks before my birthday in June, saying my dad had been rushed to the hospital. His leg was swollen and was twice as big as before. He needed help immediately. The Liberian doctors were doing the best they could to manage it, and had even reduced the swelling to the point where my father could walk on crutches. But they knew it would return back to his dire condition. At this point, he needed to return to the States immediately, and when the swelling returned days later with intense pain, we were now getting reports of certain death. Needless to say, Susan and I were frantic as our family rallied up the funds for his return trip. My dad was able to fly back to the States and was taken into a medical facility upon his arrival. He spent months in the hospital and he has recovered quite well. His leg is still in a boot, but he is more mobile again, and his wound has healed tremendously. We were even able to work out together over Thanksgiving break. And although we have had our fair share of debates, I still would not trade this dude for the world. This goes for Susan as well, who is not only a carbon copy of my father, but has somehow managed to become my second mother, mentor, confidant, and best friend all in one. I realize that our journey so far has not been conventional, but I would not change a thing about it. We are not kids anymore. We no longer question why these things happen. Instead, we love our father unconditionally and cherish each and every day with him now. I would not change leaving Liberia, my mother, the ups and downs we have had, because it has contributed to our experiences and have made us into the women that we are today and will later become. Next year, this OG of a dad of mine will be 65. He's getting older, but all the more wiser. And we hope he passes his wisdom to not only us, but the next generation. Starting with his grandchild, our nephew Elijah, who at 3 months old has already found comfort and favor with our father. So here is to another generation of a totally unbreakable bond.